All right, welcome. We are MDEV1004, that's Mobile APIs and Frameworks, in the summer 2024 semester at Georgian College, and it's week one, part one of our broadcast and recording. And we are live, so we're here in K320, that's where we are today, and we're broadcasting live on Zoom and YouTube. The YouTube link is going to be available. Again, it is actually available on Blackboard, so please check Blackboard for all the new links every week. So my name is Tom. I'll be your professor for this semester. I've been teaching computer science, I guess it would be, for a number of years, since 2011. And I've also taught a lot of mobile development and game dev as well. So those are the two things that I'm really great at. As well as web development, which is kind of what we're doing this semester, for part of the time. What is this course about? What we're doing is we're building APIs, application programming interfaces, and frameworks that can be used for both iOS and Android devices. So the idea here is that we'll be doing two things this semester. One is building a back-end API. And we'll talk about how to do that using web tools. We'll also be using TypeScript, which is something that we're going to be doing in this course. And we're also going to be using Express and Node and those kind of things. So that's what we're going to be doing as well. All right, so kind of those two things, those two technologies, so Express and Node, as well as some kind of, I might as well stand up now. We have actually a student that came to class. Thank you for joining me. We're also going to build some kind of app that connects to it. Okay, that's kind of what we're doing. And the great thing about this is because if we were only doing application data physically on the device, the problem is that each device or each application, we would have only that data for that particular application, compared with if we were to build it in an API, we can access it from any application and perhaps even make a companion app, for a website. So that's the advantage. We're going to be talking about a lot of that this semester. So in terms of our schedule, just wanted to talk about that. Every week we'll be meeting. This course is a busy course. It has quite a lot of assignments, right? They're all individual. There's no group work in this course whatsoever. So that means you do everything by yourself. That's positive and negative for some people. Positive in that you're going to do a lot of practice. Negative in that, well, you have to do it all yourself. So I think it's all positive personally. Each in-class exercise, as you're going to see, is worth 4% of your final grade, starting with this week. So this week we're actually going to do an in-class exercise. All in-class exercises, or ICEs, are due on Sunday at midnight. No exceptions. All right, so that's when it's happening. And as you can see in our schedule, every single week we have some kind of exercise. This is like a lab, and it allows you to practice and kind of build up your skills so that when we hit the midterm test and the final exam, then you know what you're doing. Okay, that's what this thing is about. So the first half, if you notice, what we're doing is we're building an API. That's what we're doing in the first half. And we're using the best technologies out there, Node and Express. You guys may have some experience with that. There might be another course that you're doing right now at the same time that's also using the same technologies or not. But that's kind of what we're doing. We're going to do a bit of a JavaScript review next week, but from next week on, actually from this week on, we're really going to be doing TypeScript the entire time. So this is more like a TypeScript course than a JavaScript course, as TypeScript is the new language of choice for the web. All right, so that's kind of something that we're going to be doing. It's modern, it's new. And that's what we're doing for the first half. The second half is connecting to social APIs for a couple weeks, payment gateways for a couple of weeks, deployment options, and then we'll do a exam review on week 13. Okay, so that's kind of what we're doing, and then the final exam is happening then. In terms of assignments, what I've planned for this course is, again, the best 10 out of 12 in-class exercises, again, each one being 4%. That means if you miss two, you still get a chance to have 100% in the in-class exercise portion, right? So let's suppose you miss one, as an example, it's okay because you still have 11 more as an example to sample from, and I take the best 10 out of 12. That means if you do 10 really good ones and 2 really bad ones, you still can get 100%. And this kind of balances off the 40% mark. So 40% means that this is your homework. Every single week, the expectation is that you're going to be doing your homework and submitting everything by Sunday. One thing that I would be looking for with each in-class exercise, especially since we're flex in this course, is I'll be looking for 2 things. A mandatory video that you must do with OBS and YouTube. There is no other options. You can't submit an MP4. You cannot submit some other funky link. It has to be from YouTube, which means get yourself a YouTube channel, okay? That's something that has to happen. So that's the number 1 thing that you're going to do. You're also going to be recording your screen, and I have to be able to hear you and see your screen, in order for me to know that you've done things properly. If I can't hear the video and if I can't see your screen, or if the video is inaccessible, let's say for example you made it private by accident, you will get a 0 on your in-class exercise. So no video, no marks. That's how it works. Same thing with GitHub. We'll be using GitHub extensively in this course. We'll be talking about GitHub today. So no GitHub link, no marks. And if the GitHub link is malformed and if there's something missing, you'll lose marks. Okay, so that's kind of how we're going to do the in-class exercises. Assignments are worth 7.5% of your final grade each, right? There'll be 4 small assignments. Again, they're equivalent to about 2 in-class exercises, and you get a couple weeks every single time to get it done. Okay, that's how they work. I recommend in this course, because there's so much content in terms of evaluation, that you start your assignments off as soon as possible. As soon as you get the assignments, and that'll be starting off next week. I'll give you assignment 1 next week. You need to start it right away. If you don't, then what's going to happen is you won't have a chance to complete it properly, as there's quite a bit of content and detail for each assignment. Okay. Midterm test is happening. Practical, right? Again, for both the midterm test and the final test, there will be a week-long assignment, a takeaway test that you'll be doing. It'll be like a small assignment, another assignment, but instead of it being 7.5%, it'll be 15%, and you'll have only a week to get it done. Okay, so that's how it kind of works out in terms of the assignment structure. And again, if I look back, just to go back to my schedule, let's go back to that schedule that I was talking about, and I'm just zoomed in here so you can see it. Some weeks you'll have an assignment and an in-class exercise happening at the same time. For example, in week 4, in-class exercise 4 is due week 4 for 4%, and then assignment 1 is due for 7.5%. That's a big week. That's 11.5% of your final grade due that weekend. And you're going to probably say something like, hey, Tom, can I have an extension? And the answer is always going to be no, right? No extensions. So in-class exercises always due Sunday. There's no extensions on those. If you don't get it done by the Sunday, it's 0, no matter what. Assignments, because you have 2 weeks and so on, the Sunday that is due, if you don't get it done by the Sunday, I do give some leeway on assignments because they are worth more, 7.5%. That means if you get to hand it in on the Monday, but you lose 20% of the grade. Tuesday, another 20, Wednesday, another 20, and then there's no more. You can't hand it in beyond or submit it beyond the Wednesday of that week, right? So that's how it works. And then, of course, midterm tests and final tests, they're due on the day that they're due. And if you don't submit it by that day, it's 0. So that's the structure of how we're going to do the course in terms of evaluations, in terms of what we're going to be talking about this semester and all those kind of things. And then I really have to talk about a couple of other things. Code, which is something that we're going to be talking about. ChatGPT, let's talk about that big elephant in the room, because we have to talk about that. Everyone uses it, I know that, and everyone kind of scours the web for code. They might use Copilot, they might use Gemini now, they might use whatever. To me, you can use up to 10% of other sources outside of your own code or my code, and it doesn't matter where you get it from. But beyond 10%, and I mean 10%, I'll count lines if I have to, right? If it looks like most of the code is not your own, you will get 0 for the application, okay? Unless otherwise noted. Like, for example, let's say I said to you, I've given you the iOS version, now use ChatGPT to do the Android version. Okay, that's different, because I've told you to do it. I've said this is what you need to do. It's part of your assignment, right? But I will be using it. You'll be seeing that there'll be times where I've expected you to use it, right? So that means the assignments expect you to use ChatGPT, which means they're harder. Okay, so that's how they kind of are. There's more details a lot of times with using it. Now, ChatGPT is not the only, it's not the, or even any other LLM, or AI model or whatever you want to call it, is not the be-all and end-all. I mean, back in the day, professors were worried when we first started teaching way back about Google. Search was a big thing. Oh my God, the students have access to search. That's it. That means they can cheat. They can do all these things. And I was never worried about it because when I thought about how students would use search, I mean, we use search all the time. I go to Stack Overflow. There's a lot of other sites out there that we use for references and so on, especially documentation online and that kind of thing. So I'm not really worried about that. And at the same time, I'm not really worried too much about ChatGPT, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of times, especially with Android being in the state that it's in, where every semester, every 3 months or even 2 months, the Android IDE changes. Like right now, it's just updated to Jellyfish. Okay, I mean, there's just the other week it was Iguana. Now it's Jellyfish. Xcode is going to constantly change, right? So, problem with ChatGPT is it's old. You get data from 6 months ago, and sometimes that messes you up, and you have to wrestle with it. You have to ask questions back and forth and back and forth. And by the time you do all that kind of stuff with ChatGPT, you can probably figure it out on your own, right? So I always, question why students do the things that they do. But I mean, I know you have a lot of load. There's lots of stuff going on. There's, I know some of you work as well. Many of you work, and you want to try and optimize the time that you're doing your courses. But I caution you, in terms of using too much external code. Most of it's got to be stuff that we've covered in class. If I see stuff that is new or that we haven't covered, it will raise red flags, and I will dig into where you got the code from and stuff like that. So please be careful about using it. And by the way, it's better learning if you just practice every week and do your in-class exercises with me, which are fairly simple, right? So the best thing, my recommendation to you is the best thing to do is, when I finally produce the video, which is typically in class, like right now it's live on YouTube, and if you actually go to Blackboard, right, and if you look, let's take a look at Blackboard together. A couple things I want to talk about for the course itself, right? I've organized it like this. Office hours are at the top. So if you want to book time with me, you can book time right here. This will take you to a booking site, and it'll give you my availability. I'm a full-time professor, which means I'm on campus most days, right? So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm on campus, sometimes on Fridays as well, and on Mondays, which means that you can probably find me in my office on many days, okay? However, if you want to book time with me and you want to guarantee that I'm around, don't just show up. It's better just to connect with me here on using my office hours, right? And you can book about a week in advance at the most, and 24 hours in advance at the very least. You have to give me at least 24 hours notice. It's got lots of stuff going on. So that's how this works. So this booking site basically allows you to book time with me. Please use it if you don't understand something. I can't reteach something to you after I've taught it because of the time schedule. So what I need to do is, if you have a real challenge with stuff, then please go there. The other thing is, we're doing Zoom this semester. I know some of you, or most of you, are using Teams. Teams sucks, all right? I don't want to use Teams. I think Teams is the worst thing that Microsoft's come out with. That's my opinion. I ain't using Teams. So we're using Zoom, and that means hopefully you got that message, and you're not trying to figure out why there's no Teams for Tom, because there's not, right? I'm still offering the same services like every other professor. I'm just using Zoom, all right? So that's Zoom link. Hopefully you've got that. You people that are online, I've got a few of you now. Hopefully you guys figured it out. The other one is Discord. I'm using Discord. So when communicating with me, if you want to chat with me, if there's something that you want to get a much quicker response from, use Discord, right? So please, I've put this Discord server invite link here. I expect all of you to connect. And just to show you what that looks like, I'm just going to launch Discord here for you guys. Discord is a chat app. I don't use anything else, okay? I'm not going to use Blackboard Mail. So if you try and connect with me on Blackboard, I'm not going to answer you, right? And I do use regular Georgian College email, right? So if you want to connect with me and you want to send a message to me and you're confused about something and you want to use Georgian College email, you can. But if it's very complex, and I mean very complex as in like it's hard for me to figure it out because you've given me like very little information and no screenshots, we may have to ask you to to come in or set up a meeting or whatever you want to do. Okay. So here's Discord. I want to show you this so you can see that it's just a chat app for people who haven't used it before. If you're a game person like I am, then most likely you know about Discord. A lot of students use Discord, and I can see some people come in. There we go, underpaid game dev. Just came into the server. Please change your name also, right, so that your name reflects who you are on Blackboard. So I know who you are. So if you're communicating with me, it's not going to be like a random person that's sending me an email or a text or DM or whatever. One thing I want to tell you about is this. In terms of availability for communications, right? Whether you're communicating with me on Blackboard, which I like I said, please don't do. That's number one. Or if you're using Discord, I will accept messages from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, right? Beyond that, if you send me a message after that, you're going to have to wait, right? And especially on the weekends. So emails and things like this, like direct messages, as an example, I'm not going to respond to on the weekends. That's family time for me, just like you guys have family time. And typically what I will do is only during the week, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's my availability for messaging. Okay, so please connect with me. You will have your own little section on Discord. If you actually look at the Discord, server there, right, you're going to see that there is a section for you guys right here. Comp 3025 is the other course I'm teaching this semester, but you guys are right here, MDEV1004. I will be posting recordings here as well as announcements and resources and a bunch of other stuff here we'll be posting, and we'll be doing that in addition to everything we do on Blackboard. So I highly recommend it. I think it's the faster way to connect with me, and especially if you're trying to reach out to me through email. Email is 24 hours, the very best. If I'm gonna get the email, by the time I get them, I have a lot of emails. For me to get back to you, I want to be able to get back to you as soon as possible. So that is something. Okay, so that's Discord. The outline and syllabus are here, so please take a look at those. It talks about the schedule I just talked about, and every week you're going to have this weekly content that's right here, and the weekly content right here is where I store all the week's data, things like GitHub links, YouTube videos, all that kind of stuff, so you guys can keep track of everything. I do everything on Blackboard. This week and every week you're going to have an in-class exercise, and the first one has been released, and I want to show you what it looks like. So here's your first in-class exercise. Again, due this Sunday, May 12th at midnight, okay? Again, what I'm asking you to do is set up your environment, and we're going to install NVM. We're going to talk about that today and how that works. And I want you to make a small application and follow along in class. And there might be a section, I'm going to modify this potentially today, a section that you need to do. So typically what we do in-class exercises, I do something with you, and then what happens is you do something on your own. That's kind of how it works with in-class exercise. So it's not like all necessarily me doing everything, it's you too, okay? Again, every in-class exercise, just to reiterate, every evaluation you do in this course, in-class exercises, also called ICES, not the terror group ISIS, ICES, right? As well as, assignments and tests, they're all individual, all right? I want to reiterate, I want to talk about that again. There's no group work, don't work with anybody. And one thing I'm going to be doing today is you're going to create a private repository for GitHub where you're going to communicate with me through GitHub. That private repository is going to house all of your in-class exercises only, and then for your assignments, that'll be a separate thing, okay? So we'll talk about that today. That's one of the outputs of today. Again, each in-class exercise worth 4% of your final grade, so they're worthy, all right? If you skip them, if you skip a few of them, like 3, let's say as an example, well, 2, you have 2 that you cannot do ever if you don't want to. Like let's say, for example, you missed week 1, and maybe you missed week 2. Well, that's it. Now you have to do the rest. And for every other one you skip, that's 4% every single time. So imagine if you skip like 4 of those, that's 16% of your final grade gone. No chance to recover that. That's gone, right? So please keep up with your homework. That's what I'm gonna recommend with you, right? Because that's how this course flows. It allows you to practice everything every week and then be really good on your test. If you do everything during the week, every week, and then you do your assignments, then the test should be no problem. But if you, for whatever reason, procrastinate, start things late, and those kind of things, there's a good chance, and a very good chance at that the test will be undoable, right? Unfinishable, right? And that's because you just haven't practiced and you're just not fast enough, and that kind of thing, okay? So that's the way we're doing things. Again, I'm not going to be using Discord for necessarily broadcasting live, but you can also use it for communicating with other students and so on. So please do that. I can see a couple of students right now, they're on the Comp 3025 chat room that they're using so that they can communicate with each other. All right, so for the people online, we have a few people online today and one person in class. And thank you for that person in class who's here. It'd be nice to see more of you. I think it's still, even though you have options to do this remotely, I highly recommend you come to class. I'm here, right? I'm here for you. You can ask questions. This can be a tough course, especially since we're using the technology that we're using, right? So, the best way to get responses and the fastest response you're going to get is if you connect with me directly in person. That's what I recommend. It's the best way of learning, guys. I know that you guys want to do it remote. I know you have other responsibilities, but you need to do this as much as you can in person. That's my opinion. Okay, so any questions for the people online and any question from my friend in class here?
No, sir.
Yep, go ahead. Sorry, you said no, or you have a question?
Yeah, I said no, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, very good. All right, so what we'll do now is we're going to move into the next part. Hopefully this is clear enough for you, and you're going to have a fun time doing this thing. There's a lot of stuff to learn in this course. I think there's some great content, and it's going to prepare you for to be great back-end developers anyway. So let's take a look and see what the next part is going to be for today. So I'm just going to kind of lower this again since we're going to do some more typing. And let me just put this down. There we go. All right, so, my friends, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what an API is really quickly. You guys should know what it is, but we'll talk about it. We're also going to be setting up your environment. Now, the environment setup, you may already have done part of it because you might say something like, well, I'm already doing a course that's on cross-platform web application or mobile application development. You might have another course like that this semester or even next semester. And you might say, well, I've already got this stuff set up, Tom. Do I have to set it up again? Well, you don't have to do anything, right? But I'm going to show you what I recommend that you can be successful in the course. So setting up your environment is something I'm going to be showing you. I'm also going to be talking in depth about version control. All right, so this is the course that I'll be talking a lot more about version control. You guys should know about Git and GitHub already. Yes, maybe. And for the people online, you can put a thumbs up or a check mark if you know. It's easier for you guys to do that in up online here. Or you can also, and that can be on the chat, or if you want to use your reactions, you can do that. There you go. So you might already know about that. And if you don't, it's okay. If you don't know about, like I said to you before, Git and GitHub, it's okay because we're going to be talking about how to do all that today. One other thing I got to talk about when it comes to environment setup, the expectation in this course is that you have a Mac. That's what the expectation is, right? Because that was the expectation when you came into this program, that you have a Mac. If you have a Windows machine and you can't do the iOS stuff, that's on you. It has to be your Mac. Please don't do it on somebody else's machine. It's got to be your machine. And please, I recommend highly, do not, for whatever reason, use a Hackintosh. Okay, don't make a Windows VM that supports Mac. It's not going to do the job. All right, so I have to talk about this first off because I know some students are doing this, and I highly recommend against it. There are some cheap options for Macs. I'm just going to go to the Apple Store. Let's do some shopping together before we start, right? And here's some shopping we're going to do, right? So from a Mac perspective, here and where we are in Ontario, right? I highly recommend a Mac Mini. If you have a Windows machine and you have a home base somewhere that you rest your, somewhere you sleep, right? That you have internet, okay? A Mac Mini is a great solution for you, right? Because even if you don't have a Mac, a full-blown Mac, a Mac Mini is actually really reasonable in price, right? So let's do some buying together. Let's suppose I want to buy a Mac Mini, right? The lowest end Mac Mini that exists right now is $799, right? It's totally affordable compared to what we had before. And they have some great options to basically pay as you go. $36 a month for 24 months, right? If you go to the Apple store. So I think it's a really good deal. Again, I don't work for Apple, okay? I don't necessarily tell you that what you should do, but I recommend a Mac Mini. A Mac Mini's got a really cool M2 processor, right? You don't need a screen, really. And all you need to do is remote into it. So here's an example of what I can do. Let's suppose I want to remote into my Mac Studio, all right? So I bought a Mac Studio. I'm going to remote into it, right? So I'm using Google Remote Desktop, and I'm kind of remoting into my Mac Studio, right? And you can do the same thing. You don't have to use a Mac, here in house. You can use it remote. And now, in terms of space, in terms of usability, it's not bad. Like you can see, I'm still able to use it. I can still run Xcode, right? I can still do all those things and run a Windows environment, no problem at the same time. So if you're someone who's a Windows person and you're like, I don't have a Mac, I can't afford a $2,000 Mac. You don't have to have a $2,000 Mac. You can do $799, you can do it pay as you go, you can do a lot of different ways, but you need a Mac for this course and for this program, right? So, my recommendation is fix that problem as soon as possible. Don't wait until, next semester or the end of the semester to do it. It's a lot of work for you guys to maintain a VM. They break up sometimes, they don't work properly, and especially when Apple comes up with their updates, you may have some issues, okay? So just letting you know. All right, so that is my talk about buying a Mac. And I always do that every semester when I've talked to mobile development students, MDEV students. I'm like, buy a Mac every single time. And then some people wait until like, the end of the semester, like July, August time frame. And then they're like, I can't do my in-class exercises, Tom, because I don't have a Mac. And I'm like, well, I've talked about it at the beginning. It's a requirement for this program. I would fix that up as soon as possible. They also have student discounts, guys. So if you actually are a student and you apply to get a Mac, you go to the Apple store or whatever, they do have student discounts for buying a Mac. You can also buy a refurbished Mac, right? Actually, I should bring that back up again for those people who are doing it. One more thing. Only because I want to make sure that you guys know that there are options out there. I wouldn't buy, if I was thinking about a Mac, I definitely wouldn't buy a used Intel Mac. No, I wouldn't buy a used Intel Mac at all. I think it's a mistake. But they have something called certified refurbished, which is pretty cool. And certified refurbished is pretty awesome because at the end of the day, what you get is a 2-week-old Mac. I went to the Apple store and I said, hey guys, what do you do with your certified refurbished? What does that mean? And they said, it's only 2 weeks old. Someone has bought this thing and returned this after 2 weeks. We clean it up, we make it like new, give it a new box, and it's like new, right? So there's some more savings there. So let's take a look at that. If I shop Mac on certified refurbished, there's tons of options, and every time this changes. Take a look. $679, as an example, for a Mac Mini M2, right? So a little bit cheaper, right? Or if you want to get a Mac, a MacBook, whether it's a MacBook Air, you can see that you can save a couple $100 here and there, right? If you actually look for them. And these are all, the new Apple Silicon chips. And whether it's an M1 at bare minimum to an M2 or M3, you can find them here on certified refurbished. Totally worth doing, guys. 100%, right? And the other option, of course, is the educational pricing. And you can't get both. You can either do certified refurbished or educational pricing, but not both. I recommend them, and you can see that Mac Minis do exist. They're there. And there's lots and lots and lots of options here in terms of what you can get from certified refurbished, from everything from really low end to high end stuff too. You can see there's like 11 pages of stuff. All right, so please don't wait. Like I said, try and get something that's worthy for you guys so you can get your course done. Okay, so that is in-class exercise. We talked about that. Let's get moving now, unless there's any other questions. Hopefully you get no other questions. Let's get moving now on the course content, which is really about APIs for today, right? So again, what is an API? We talked about this being an application programming interface, right? And
excuse me, sir.
Yes.
So, sir, for this specific course, we need a Mac.
You
You
need
are
a Mac
saying?
for this program. And I will be using
Uh,
iOS in both Xcode, iOS, and Android examples in this course, right?
okay,
So,
okay, sir.
so you need to be able to do both, right? So that's why I
All right.
recommend you get a Mac no matter what you do.
And we don't need a like we can hook it up with our laptop. You are saying?
Well, like I said, so if I was going to do it, if I was going to buy, let's say, a Mac Mini, what I might do is
Yeah.
have a Mac Mini, like the small one. If costing is an option or is an issue, I would buy the smallest thing you can, a Mac Mini, keep it at
Yeah.
home, right? Connect it to the internet, right? And then remote into it, so you don't have to take it with you. You know, you can if it's because you have to, you don't have it doesn't have a screen, right? So it's just something that you do, or you can get a small MacBook Air. As long as you have some kind of Mac, you can run Xcode. Okay, it's not that
Okay.
bad. So yes, you do need a Mac for this program.
All right. All right, sir.
Okay, so back to this. So we get our back to application programming interface. We have this idea of client and server architecture. Okay, client and server architecture. So the way it works is we're going to send a request from the client machine. It could be a desktop or a mobile device to the server. The request is going to be interpreted by the server, and then it's going to come back as a response. So request, response every single time. And this request response architecture is what we're going to be looking at this semester more than anything else. I'm going to make a request, I'm going to get a response. Okay? In terms of the way this can be done, okay, so there's many different ways of doing this thing. For example, common APIs are RESTful. There's something called SOAP, and also something called GraphQL. 3 different types are very, very popular. But really the way it works is, no matter what it is, and specifically for REST APIs, which is what we're going to be using in this course, right? I'm going to send a request to the server. The server is going to send a request to the database. The database is going to send some data back to the server. The server is going to process that data in some way, and then send it back to the client machine, and usually in a JSON format. JSON, right? Which is a type of JavaScript notation, right? That you guys should be familiar with. So that's how it works. Then what the client machine is going to do, whether it's a desktop or mobile device, right? The client machine is going to interpret that data, parse it, deserialize it, and make it into objects or do whatever it's going to do with that data. That's what's happening. That's really the entire thing about APIs, right? The difference between an API and a web application is that the web application has some kind of front end. You might have React. You might be using Angular. You could be using something else on the front end. When API has no front end, right? The API is just data, right? And so in this course, what we're going to be talking about is how to get data from the API, how to structure our API. We're going to make one from scratch. We're going to host it live. That's what we're going to be doing this semester. And we're going to be getting data back into your application. Whether it's Android or iOS, we're going to be working on that kind of thing more than anything else. Okay? Also, choice of backend database is also an option, right? Right now, we're going to be working with MongoDB because that's very popular. But you can also use Firebase, which is also a very popular choice. I know that the data management course that you guys might be taking as well, maybe not this semester, but next semester, is going to be talking about, I'm not sure if actually you already took it. Some people take it out of order, right? So, but the data management course talks about how to do that as well, how to select the proper data persistence method, whether you're going to use something like Firebase on the back end, MySQL database, whatever it's going to be on the back end, and there's different solutions for different problems, okay? So again, how do we build an API? So again, first of all, figure out why we're building it. Why are we doing this thing, right? So that's the first question to ask, like, what's the purpose of this thing, right? And then choose a design approach. We're going to be choosing REST, right? Because that's the most modern approach that we can use right now, right? Then we're going to define something like that are called endpoints. Think about these as routes. Some people call them routes, potato, right? But basically these routes, let's call them routes. These routes, these endpoints are basically just going to be a URL destination, right? Where we kind of do something like, okay, whatever my API is called, /API, / and whatever that thing that I want to do. Get data or show me movies or whatever I'm going to do, right? And what it's going to do is it's going to return the data. That's what's going to happen. It's going to return the data based on the request, right? And there are going to be different kinds of requests we can make. We can make a GET request that we're going to be talking about soon, a POST request, right, which usually asks the server to change something. Usually we use POST request for modifications, changes. We could also make a PUT request for updating and a delete request for deletion. Okay, we can do all those kinds of requests. Servers and APIs can also be used for authentication, right? So I might have to authenticate myself, because if it's just an open API, anyone can use it, that's fine. But sometimes, especially when it comes to mobile data, we want to basically secure that data somehow. And so we're going to use something called JWT, or JSON Web Tokens, this semester, okay, to secure our server. All right, very good. So then we have to choose a programming language. That's the next thing we're going to do. What programming language we're going to use, and the framework. We're going to be using TypeScript, and we're going to be using Express and Node as our solution stack. And then what about our data models and our database connectivity? We're going to be connecting to MongoDB for the most part. We may play with Firebase as well, because it's a very popular solution, right? And then implement the API using our chosen framework. We talked about that. We're going to validate, test and validate, and finally deploy our API to some kind of server or cloud platform. We're going to be using something called render.com, which is free, that we can use, so that you're not going to pay anything. I don't want you guys to pay anything unless you have to. If you're going to pay anything, buy a Mac. Okay, that's what I want you guys to do. Spend your money on a Mac. Don't spend your money on services right now. Okay, so what is REST? Okay, it stands for Representational State Transfer, right? It's an architectural style for building APIs that uses HTTP requests. We just talked about them: GET, POST, PUT, and DELETE. And it's the most popular thing that is out there right now. It's evolved from SOAP. It used to be, SOAP was very, very popular. They're still being used today in many cases. And what it does is it exchanges structured data over HTTP or other internet protocols. Again, it's XML messages. That's why I don't use it. I like using JSON-based data, which is more modern. GraphQL is actually a modern way of doing things. It's a query language that's used for APIs and developed by Facebook. The problem with GraphQL for this course is it's just additional overhead for what we're going to be doing. There's a lot to learn. I think GraphQL might be a great second thing to do, but maybe not a first thing, because you're going to learn a lot in a very short time. So definitely GraphQL is awesome. All right, so here's our design approach. We're going to be using Node as the server type, right? Express as our, basically our, to build our server out and to add middleware functions. MongoDB, right, as an example for our database, and that's what we call a solution stack. So full stack backend developer might use those three things, plus the full part is many times React or Angular. And everyone has different opinions of what the best thing is. Although I know React is very popular out there because React is an easier framework to learn. It is a framework, no matter what anyone says anymore. Some people called it a library at one point. But as you'll see, if we ever do React, it's quite challenging to make it work without doing what you have to do. There's other ones other than React and Angular. There's Svelte, there's Vue, there's a bunch of them. But that's the front end, and we don't need the front end at all, any front end right now. The only front end we're going to have is your phone, right? Your mobile application. So what we're going to be doing along with this is we're also going to be building small mobile applications, right? Because we have to. I got to show you what it looks like on your phone, whether it's an Android or iOS. Okay, and I might do both. Okay, so that's why I'm saying you may need your Xcode to work. I may say, okay, today we're doing it in iOS, and your in-class exercise is going to be doing it in Android. Or today we're going to do it in Android, and your in-class exercise is going to be doing it with iOS. And if you don't do it, you lose. You can't do the exercise, right? You have to be able to do both. Questions around, before we move on, questions around APIs, what they are, and why we're using them. Okay. So let's move on to the next part, which is setting up our development environment. Okay. which is kind of an important piece. So the first thing is we want to have Visual Studio Code. That is the first piece that we want. And I already have it. Hopefully you do. I'm just going to bring it up here. Here's my Visual Studio Code eventually. And of course it's launching on another screen because, I have multiple monitors here and it's just a weird thing that it does sometimes. Let's see if I can grab that thing and pull it over. There it is. There's Visual Studio Code. Yay, right? VS Code, you can get it. And let me just talk about where to get it from. If we go here, you can get it from, if I do VS Code, right? If I type that in, it'll take it to Visual Studio Code. And Visual Studio Code is, it's cross-platform. It will work for Windows, Mac, and Linux, which is great. It's built with TypeScript, believe it or not, from the ground up, which is pretty cool. And as of this recording, it's version 1.89, which is pretty cool, right? So this is in my opinion, the IDE of choice when it comes to using, to create APIs. We'll also be using both Android Studio and we'll be using Xcode, all right, like I said. So let's talk about Android Studio here. So if I go to developer.android.com, hopefully you have this installed already. And if I look down here, you can see that if I download Android Studio, the latest version is Jellyfish. So I'll be using that, all right? So please, if you haven't had a chance to download this or if you're taking an Android course, I'm going to be using Jellyfish, the latest version, okay? With Kotlin, not Java. I don't use Java. Java's old. If you guys are learning Java, sorry guys. We don't use Java in the real world, right? So that's how we're doing it with Android with Kotlin. Okay, so that's what we're doing. And we're also going to be doing Xcode. So if I was going to look at Xcode, so if I go to Xcode download, right, Xcode 15 is the latest version. In order for you to make this work, you must have a Mac. You cannot download this thing on a Windows machine. It will not work, right? So please, we're going to have this, and we're going to be using Xcode as well as Android Studio in this course. Okay, so just to be aware. Questions around this before we move on?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. The OBS is showing Discord since long.
That's bad. Let me just make sure. Thank you for that. But it's being recorded properly, I know that. So I'm actually recording it right on YouTube. One sec. I will stop my sharing. 1 second. Thank you for that. I appreciate that you told me that because I wouldn't have known unless you did that. And let's share the right screen, which is this one. How's that? So yeah, so I was saying that for those people, Visual Studio Code is something that we want to look at. Android Studio is definitely something that we want to look at as well. And of course, Xcode. Those are the three things that we've been talking about right now. Okay. I also talked about earlier how Blackboard is set up with office hours at the top, the Zoom link, Discord server link right here, and the weekly content being right here, which is where I'm keeping my videos. And the videos are also going to be kept. I've already kind of shared the link with the video. So if you wanted to watch this live, let's say you wanted to get live transcription through YouTube, you can do that by just clicking on this link right now. Okay, so that's another thing you can do. Okay, hopefully that's good. Sorry about that. Let's move on. So that's those are the three things that you're going to need in terms of download. I'm suggesting right now that you download and install Visual Studio Code for your machine right now, whether it's for Windows or Mac. Okay. Again, you can follow along today with Windows if you have a Windows machine, because we'll be doing most things with Visual Studio Code, but there will be times going forward that I will use Xcode or Android, right? Or Android. Okay. So that's the first thing. And once we have Visual Studio Code installed, and let me just get a show of hands here, or the best way to do that, of course, would be if you could kind of in your as you're participating, you can put like a thumbs up as an example if you've got Visual Studio Code installed. You guys are good? Yeah. Make sure you have it. And Now, sometimes my Visual Studio Code will look different than yours, right? That's something, some people complain about that. They're like, how come yours looks different than ours? Well, I've got a lot of extensions. And I'll be talking about those extensions with you as we go forward, right? Some of them are, are great. I'm just gonna restart my extensions here. Restart Visual Studio Code. And what it does is it gives me some, additional functionality here. That's what I use use the extensions for, okay? So that's number one. The other thing that we need to do is Git and GitHub. Now, if you're a Mac user, right, and hopefully all of you are, right, then you should be able to do this. And again, I'm just going to go back to my remote Mac for a second. So I'm just going to kind of remote in to my Mac. Okay. And when I remote in, I'm just going to go, I'm going to make this, I'm just going to maximize my screen here so you can see it like as if I'm on a Mac now. There we go. So now I'm on a Mac, right? So what I want to do is I use iTerm, right, for my terminal. Okay, let's miss tip. And sometimes iTerm will ask me for an update. Let's just do it. iTerm is pretty good. It's a really good, I believe, alternative to the terminal that's built into Mac. So here's my iTerm. And let's just do one of these. There we go. And we're just going to clear that up. Always allow. There we go. So one thing that you want to notice about the terminal is that I can issue a command like git -- version. Okay, if I do git -- version, you guys should be able to do that. So please, if you try that out now, git -- version, you should be able to do that right now. Because on Mac specifically, on a terminal, you should be able to do this no problem. Okay, on Windows machines, if I was going to switch back just for a second. So let me just switch back to the Windows machine here. It's a problem for many Windows users because by default, the terminal does not have Git. But in my case, I've installed it. So here's my Windows terminal, and I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to say git -- version, and you can see that on my Windows terminal, it also has that. So you need to have this installed on the terminal, however you do it, right? Whether you're using a Windows machine or a Mac, you need this to have this done, okay? And just to make this a simpler demonstration, and because I said that you need a Mac, I'm going to do most of my lesson today that we're going to be doing on the Mac itself. And well, maybe I'll switch back and forth to make it easier for you guys. So that way you're not completely, I don't want to upset anybody because I know some people don't have a Mac yet. But one of the great advantages of a Mac is it's got Git built into it. And I always say that the reason why you've been asked to buy a Mac for this program, not just for this course, is because it's just a better solution for mobile development. If you want to be a mobile developer, you need a Mac. All right, there's just no other way around it. Okay, so you can see that we're pretty good here. Again, VS Code. Let's suppose on my Mac version, I need to update it. Right, I'm just going to bring up my Mac's version of VS Code. There we are, and that's just using C++. Yay! But let's suppose for now, I'm just going to close off. I'm going to just close down this particular project. There we go. Okay. And what I want to do is a lot of times VS Code will update. So even now you can see that it's downloading an update on Mac for me right now, and that's important. Okay. So make sure your VS Code is updated and ready to go. Sometimes it needs a reload, like I said, for certain things. Here, a lot of times VS Code will ask to restart an update, and I'm totally fine with that. I'll let that do its update on the back end while we're doing things. Okay, because VS Code is going to be one of our tools of choice for this semester. And there we have it. Right, so there's release for April 2024. We have our latest version, as an example, and we'll be using VS Code in here as well. So Git and VS Code so far. Okay, Git and VS Code. I'm just going to switch back to my PowerPoint slide deck. So we talked about these two things, Git local install and a GitHub account. Now, does everyone here have a GitHub account? Yes? Again, I'm not making any assumptions because I don't know which courses you've taken and I don't know what you've done. But what you need to do, if you haven't done so already, is go up. I'm just going to go to incognito mode here just to show you what this looks like. Go up and get a GitHub account. So if I go to GitHub, right? And let's just go to not search GitHub, but github.com. Then what you want to do is sign up for a GitHub account. Okay, so this is where you would go, github.com. And what you want to do is create a GitHub account so that you can do this course. Without a GitHub account and without a proper GitHub link, and we're going to do that today, you will not be able to do your in-class exercises or your assignments or your tests. Remember, the two things that I'm requiring from you every single time is a working link to your video that I can see the screen and hear your voice. Has to be on YouTube. No MP4s allowed. No actual files. I'm not going to allow you to use Loom or some other video service or whatever. It's got to be YouTube. Okay? It must be YouTube. I want you to make it unlisted, and as long as I have the link, I can use it. If the link is inaccessible, whether it's on YouTube or on GitHub, 0 for that particular assignment or in-class exercise. I'm letting you know in advance so that there's no upsetness. Okay? And so this is kind of the thing to do. So get your GitHub repository going, or GitHub account going right away, and we'll talk about how to do the proper stuff with your repository in a second. Next, which is new for you, NVM and Node.js. Node.js you might have, but I don't want you to use Node.js like this. I want you to use NVM. Okay, NVM is the Node version manager. Okay, for Windows it looks like this. If I was to go to Windows command prompt, here it is again. So here's my Windows command prompt. And if I typed in NVM, right, then I would get something that looks like this. How do you get this? Well, I've given you a link for NVM and how to install stuff. So we talked about Visual Studio Code and what it is, how to get it. And I'm going to talk about version control in a second. But I want to go to, let's skip back to this in a second, but I want to go to, I'm just going to skip through here, is installing Git and Git Basics. There's your GitHub account like I talked about, which is what we're going to be talking about soon. So all this is in here, but one thing is installing NVM. So NVM is this link right here for if you're a Windows machine, Windows person, and if you wanted to install and to do part of this course with Windows, you could, right? You go here. So this is, sorry, that's Node. I'll be okay. Node is what you want to use, but actually, let me go back to NVM. NVM is here. So this is the one for Windows. Okay, so it's a third party that's made it, which is pretty cool. And NVM for Windows is in the PowerPoint slide deck. If you look on Blackboard, it exists. And I'm just going to feed this link for those people on the chat. All right, for those people who are going to use or who are using Windows, there's the one. There's the link. And I've also put this link up on Blackboard for you. What this does is it sets up a way of managing your version for Node for Windows. And why is this good? The reason why is because if we're working with different clients, like I'm talking like actual like customers, right? They might be using different versions of Node, and you want to be able to switch to that version. The problem with having it just on your system is you'd have to remove your current Node version and then add a new one. And that's a terrible way of doing things. So please, if you've already got Node installed and you need to uninstall Node, okay, right now, the first thing you should do is uninstall your Node, whether it's from, if you're a Mac person or a Windows person, uninstall Node, okay? That's one thing you have to do. And the next piece is after you've uninstalled it, if you're a Windows person, install NVM. NVM will allow you to use it, and versions of NVM are kind of right here. That's where they exist. And if you scroll down, the latest version of NVM is 1.1.12. That's the latest version. And what it allows you to do is if you download the executable here, NVM setup, this is for Windows, then it will set up a way for you to download and install the latest version of Node. And we'll talk about how to do that in a second. But this is what you need if you're a Windows user. What about if you're a Mac user, like most of you should be, right? Well, there's another link for that, right? So for the Mac users, couple things to note. First of all, I highly recommend, Homebrew is the best method to install NVM, okay? don't install MVM directly. So here is Homebrew, right? So this is the link for how to install MVM with Homebrew. Okay, so this is the one. And I'm just going to give you that link here up on the chat. Okay, and why is this good? There's a great article here, that talks about how to do it and what are the prerequisites. So first, install Homebrew, remove existing node versions. It talks about how to do that here. Please follow the instructions, guys, for those people who are using their Mac, which is most of you, right? And then what you want to do is after you've done that, you want to install MVM, and if you follow the instructions on how to do it step by step, there's a step-by-step way of installing the latest version of Node, okay? Which is what we're going to be doing. Okay, so please follow these instructions. I'm going to give you some time. Right now we're sitting at 11:56. I've gone for about an hour, right? So let's take a 10-minute break. And what I want you to do on that break is two things. One, maybe go to the washroom and get a coffee or whatever you're going to do. And the other thing is follow these instructions and get MVM installed, which is part of your in-class exercise for this week. Okay, so you need to have MVM installed, and I want you guys to do that. Okay? So how this looks, just for you guys to understand, is if you're a Windows user, then you should be able to do NVM minus -- version and have 1.11 or 1.12, doesn't matter, even if it's the older version, it's fine. And if it's not, if you want to update from 1.11 to 1.12, it's okay. You can do that, right? And I'm going to show you how to do that right now while you guys are on break. So right now it's around 12. Let's take 10 minutes. So we'll come back at 12:10, and then hopefully you guys have installed NVM.